Hello, bonjour, and welcome to the Don't Waste Water podcast. I am your host, Antoine Walter, and I have the great pleasure to welcome Ravid LEVY as my guest today. Ravid is the founder of RLV-consulting services and a former VP technology for Fluence and Chief Technical Officer for RWL Water. In today's episode, Ravid will unveil the rationale behind successful innovation in water and wastewater treatment, thus guiding us along the path from idea to commercial achievement. Stay tuned to get his top 3 trending treatment technologies, his advices to avoid the pitfalls along the innovation way, and his take on skeptics and our industry in general.
You're listening to Don't Waste Water, the podcast that helps water professionals to improve their wastewater treatment, optimize their operation costs, and keep up with the latest market trends. This podcast is brought to you by GF Piping Systems. As a leading supplier of piping systems made of plastics and metal, GF Piping Systems is the global expert for the safe and reliable transportation of water, chemicals, and gas. For more information, visit gfps.com.
Hi Ravid, welcome to the show. Make us dream. Tell us how sunny it is right now in the water startup nation, which is also called Israel, I think.
Yeah, it is sunny actually, which is not very unusual over here. It rains sometimes in winter, but it's mostly sunny. And beyond the beautiful weather for tourists, when tourism is on, of course, it actually may be, or possibly the reason why it is also a water startup country, because for decades we just had to survive and innovate and grow in a pretty arid and limited area. So, they say the need is the mother of all inventions.
So the water scarcity is somehow driving the inventivity.
It's probably the fundamental reason why water was always a big deal here, both in agriculture and municipal, in every aspect of the water cycle. It's also a very small country, so historically it was very centralized management of water resources, both by law. There is a unique law for water being a public asset in Israel, all types of water, actually including seawater and groundwater. So everything is managed as a holistic approach, which also allows management of all different types of water and taking decisions on a broader scale. So innovation also runs underneath, possibly because some say we're just innovative people over here, not only in water, in other things. So the startup nation and the water startup nation goes well together.
Well, actually, in terms of country and experience, you've not limited your path to Israel. So maybe you can guide us through your steps and just tell us the main milestones.
Yeah, well, I had the chance to experience some other cultures as well. In fact, I started my career as in environmental biology in university, not at all in the water business per se, but after I finished my master's, I went to work for some private companies that happened to work with water, and I got addicted, if you like. I got hooked on this subject, and then just flew forward with the flow. And then after a few years, I had the chance to be sent to Australia, to relocate to Australia by a company I worked with at the time. And I managed the operation there for a few years. That was an amazing experience, both personally, but also professionally. Australia was back then in the middle of its millennium drought. And there was a huge activity around desalination, industrial water, effluent reuse. it was booming over there at the time, and it was an amazing experience to be part of that market, and I learned a lot. And then when I went back to Israel, I continued to work internationally from here as part of the different companies I was with. And that gave me an opportunity to be exposed to other markets, especially in Latin America, Europe, Southeast Asia. It was amazing to see. It was very interesting to be exposed to the different approaches, to different problems, and also to the shared experiences and challenges that different economies and different cultures face regarding water, wastewater, and everything around it. Today, I'm doing private consulting to different companies and organizations, trying to share this experience and work together with them on bridging the gaps between technology and those different markets and the different needs.
So you founded your own company?
I'm an independent consultant. I formed my own little company that giving boutique consulting services, if you like, to different organizations and companies, both here in Israel and in other countries, mainly focusing on water, wastewater, and environmental challenges.
What's your secret sauce? I like to call it that way. I know you're not McDonald's, but what's your secret sauce when it comes to that? Is it this international experience you've collected? Is it the variety of things you've seen through your path?
This always helps, of course, because if you don't have the perspective and knowledge of the different markets and environments, it's very hard to be effective over there. But if I have to choose one secret, or not secret, but one unique component or of what I offer, what I have to offer is, I think, basically the combination between technical knowledge and the commercial approach. So what I found over the years is that in many organizations in our industry, there are always two sides of the business or the organization. One is very technical and engineering people, maybe R&D or engineering or even project execution and maintenance. Others are those who should deal with the money at the end, the commercial people, the marketing, the sales, the finance sometimes. And in many cases, there's a gap. There's a lack of communication. I actually sometimes find it as two different languages or approaches to life in general, to water particularly. Some of them talk in technical terms, others in basically financial or legal terms. I include IP management in the second part. And each side, in many cases, don't really understand the other. Sometimes even afraid of the vocabulary or what makes the other side tick. And I found that just handful of people, just few people in the industry, not too many, can bridge that gap, can speak both languages, and can narrow those gaps and make those organizations sometimes work more efficiently. And this is especially important when new technology or an innovative design, which is by nature in this industry, usually starts from the technical or the engineering or the R&D side, needs to go to market and eventually be sold, be profitable, be competitive. And switching from a brilliant technical solution to a good commercial solution is a long path. And in order to do that efficiently, not to end up with white elephants that are perfectly designed but cannot be sold, or the other way around, that are extremely competitive but lack the actual possibility to function technically. Doing both is where good technology eventually ends up. And in order to do both, you need to speak both languages. If I really need to define that secret, that the unique aspect is bridging those gaps and speaking both languages. I had the opportunity to do all of that in my different roles in the past, in different markets and environments. So mixing all this together, I think sometimes can bring value to organizations that suffer from those lack of communication.
And today, with your role as a consultant in that aspect of being the bridge, does it mean that you are the one bringing those guys together, translating from one end to the other what one or the other is meaning, or how can I see your role today?
It depends on the type of organization I work with. So when I work with an academic or research institute, for example, I sometimes take the role of business development. In other words, understanding or taking those innovation from the lab scale or from the even not theoretical, but usually from the concept and lab scale and research, and starting to understand where is their commercial potential towards the market, how do they fill gaps in the market, and maybe what should be the development approaches or how to develop them further in order to fit into needs in the market. And then later, how they compare or how can they compete with the common practices that are already there. You need to understand what is already being done out there in that specific market or niche, and to understand the gaps or the disadvantages and also the advantages of the existing solutions, and try to build the new innovation to exceed that, to win in that game later when they become commercial. Along the way, the need to understand the need to protect the IP, because in that example of academic research, naturally and everywhere, academics, they want to publish. That's how they are being judged. That's what they are there to do. Sometimes publishing too early before protection may lose the protection over the IP later, and that creates a difficulty when you try to go to market or to commercialize that in any way. So this is sometimes what I do when I work with the innovators or the researchers. When I work with more commercial or implementation companies, this is really actually standing there in the middle and bridging those gaps. Sometimes just sitting in joint design review meetings of a certain design or a certain project even or development with people from both sides of the organization, and translating, sometimes simply translating. They are all speaking the same language in terms of English or Hebrew, but they are completely talking about different things when they talk engineering and commercial and IP and other aspects of what a good product is or a good solution is. There is a value of having someone in the room physically or in the project that can understand the messages from all sides and integrate that into decisions, into actions that compromise or just take calculated decisions which side to prefer in a certain action. The approach in general, and this is a little bit sometimes hard to convince, is that if any one of those sides of the equation wins or prevails, the organization loses. Because if a solution is engineered too well, it will just usually be too expensive or not competitive, and then it will not be sold. However, if it's too competitive, if you like, if the commercial people prevails, it can sell like hot bagels, but then it will not work.
It's a matter of balance, yeah.
It's a balance, and that balance is different in every organization and every product and every solution. And this is exactly what I'm trying to offer, the analysis of the right balance and assisting the organization to walk that fine line towards commercial success at the end.
I guess that leads us to the heart of our topic today, which is how ideas can become real. How do you bring a good technical idea to a good commercial success? And you've given us already some good insight and some great lines on how that could work and how that should be. But maybe let's go back to the really roots of it. How do you define the birth of an idea in water and wastewater treatment? What is leading to a new idea?
A real need out there. I mean, of course, it's not unique to our industry. But when something is missing, something is not functioning well or not efficient, or just maybe sometimes there's a new need in the market, then this is a great motivation or a great starting point for innovation. Examples: desalination used to be very expensive. I remember that at the time in Australia, someone termed this, saying about this at the time, saying that desalination is liquid energy. It used to be liquid energy, but in the last decade or so, innovation and changes in design, technology, many things managed to drop the energy use through that and through other innovations, also mainly the overall water cost, to something which was regarded impossible or non-realistic just a few years ago. And, we used to talk about $1 or $2 a cubic meter in large-scale desalination. And these days, everybody takes almost for granted that tenders for large POT projects are done at less than $0.50, 50 cents for cubic meter, all included. Energy, financing, maintenance, operation, membranes, you name it, everything is included in less than 50 cents. And still companies and organizations and even governments can justify that economically. So it's profitable.
How did we come there? Is it something which was incremental, things which were every day a bit better, or did someone come with a game changer which was disruptive?
It was gradual. So not incremental, because in that project, it is based on some big projects made significant improvements. But it took time. It took over about maybe 10 years for this to really happen. There were some significant leaps in innovation in certain projects. I mean, in the desalination industry, everybody talks about Ashkelon, for example, where ID introduced some interesting or very innovative design concepts that made the plant much more efficient, which is now adopted in many other plants, and then later in Sorek, and now the new Sorek plant. And I'm just talking about the Israeli desalination environment. Similar things happened in Saudi and other places where large desalination plants have been built, in Singapore and in Australia. And over this time, from one project to the other, and from competitiveness and from the need to actually reduce the cost in order to win the tenders and to reduce the ongoing cost, the energy, etc., there was the advancement. So I think this is a good example for a gradual change, not a light bulb that all of a sudden was invented and changed the entire world. In fact, I think it will be pretty hard to find these kind of game changers or huge disruptors in this kind of industry. Like a singular point where a bright idea changed the industry.
So you do believe that the potential for game changers is somehow gone? Because I would say, if you look at the wastewater treatment, when the first guy came and say, hey, we're going to do activated sludge, and that's going to be a way to treat water, I'm pretty sure people looked at him like he was crazy. So that was a game changer. But I guess at some point, if an industry is reaching maturity, the potential for game changers is going to be lower.
I'm not sure. There's always potential for game changers. There are game-changing ideas in this industry, but the adoption and the upscaling of them in this industry takes so much time and ongoing improvements that by the time this bright idea becomes, real commercial reality or implemented in the real scale and globally, the connection to the original idea is somewhat faded already. And there are many, many improvements along the way over that initial invention, right? Maybe this is at the end the case everywhere. Of course, the first car that was invented was a huge change, but it's very, very different from the cars that we drive today. So, but this is a more philosophical discussion, what is a game changer and does it matter? The end game, the end product, the result is what really matters at the end. And if an industry manages to double or triple its efficiency in a decade, like the seawater desalination industry in the example that I just gave, and that's a great achievement. And with wastewater treatment, like the example you gave, the original activated sludge is very different from the advanced MBR and MABRs and other SBRs and whatever technologies that are now being implemented to different applications, although the principle is the same and the bacteria is many times the same.
You are mentioning some of this newest trends which are coming out. I love top threes. So I'm going to ask you a tricky question. What would be, in your opinion, the top three inventions that you've seen pass through our industry over the last years? Your three favorite ones?
I wouldn't say inventions. I would say trends or technologies, because the point of invention may be long time ago, but the shift from a great topic for academic research or conferences to the point where it actually makes a difference in the industry, that's where I put my subjective finger on where it starts being interesting, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, I think we are just at the beginning, but I think nobody can really doubt the role that digital, computerized data analysis technologies will make in this industry. We're not even seeing the tip of the iceberg in this case. In fact, it's a good evidence how slow our industry is. I mean, out there, we're using cell phones and big data and cloud computing every day. We're actually doing it right now with Zoom and with Facebook and with LinkedIn without even thinking about it. But when it comes to our water resources, this is still regarded as science fiction, right? People still say sentences like, who needs more sensors if nobody will look at the data? The answer is why somebody needs to look at the data. Does any person look at the data we produce online all the time? No. There are technologies that can digest huge amount of data that humans can never assimilate by themselves. And then the next question of the skeptics is, okay, well, so we will not need to have people? Will it replace people? The answer is obviously no. It will just need different people with different skills to get the results of the huge database analysis and act properly. I still feel this. I still feel this fear of this kind of I don't know, shifts in attitude, but it's already out there. The water industry, which was always only based on hardware engineering. Control is usually in our industry meaning, a PLC, I don't know, included in some mechanical system, and it gets closer to what we usually call a high-tech industry. And if we can increase our ability to collect valuable data and analyze it. Collecting without analyzing is worthless. The entire sensors industry will have to shift dramatically from expensive and sophisticated sensors to something that can be installed in as many points as possible around anywhere. And then the data analysis, the cloud computing systems will have to adapt also and take all that available data. Just imagine what would happen if any home in Flint, Michigan, had an inexpensive sensor for water quality, just like they have a water meter to measure how much water. There was a reliable sensor that says what is the quality in real time, and every point in time, something out there would alarm if the water quality changes at the entry of each and every home in the US or anywhere. It sounds like science fiction.
In the case of Flint, Michigan, again, it would have helped a lot.
Of course, or anywhere else. But at the moment, we take for granted that we measure the quantity of water at the entry of every home. But the quality of water is still too complex to measure and too expensive to measure, so we don't. We just measure it at the treatment plant at the best. And then we assume that that if it's good at the treatment plant, it will also be good at every point around the system. But if we had good measurement devices, inexpensive measurement devices everywhere, and we could also analyze and monitor all that enormous data that will flow from everywhere, we will know in real time what people drink and what wastewater is being produced, if that would be the case. And then we can act immediately and save a lot. Now, at the moment, it's impossible because a water quality sensor costs so much and so complex to install, and then there's no one to actually analyze the data.
Well, I can fully relate to what you're just saying. In France, some couple of years ago, there was a new regulation that said you had to make some measurements at the outlet of every wastewater treatment plant. So they created a huge data set, and then they found out that nobody was doing anything with this data, and they were unable to process it. So they just withdrew the law, and now the law is not existing anymore just because nobody had a clue what to do with the data. Right. So there's an untapped potential. So I fully subscribe to your top one, right, which would be this digital.
So that would be top one. If we now go down to more process related innovations, there are two trends now in the market that is already going strong, and I think will keep going strong. One is on the low-level residual contaminants, both in water and in wastewater, which is in fact gradually the boundaries between the two becomes very vague in places, of course, where effluents is being reused eventually for potable reuse, either direct or indirect. I mean, California, Singapore, other places. And then the contaminants in the water eventually will need to be treated similarly as if it was going to drinking. Together with stricter or better analytical methods that can go down to the parts per billion resolution and stricter regulation that goes with that, because obviously, like you said before, it's impossible to regulate something that you can't measure. So the measuring capability also triggers higher regulatory approaches towards contaminants that before were just below measurement capability or something like that. So now contaminants like PFAS in drinking water becomes a huge issue, especially in the US, but soon everywhere. Of course, in the wastewater, some hormone disruptors, residual, very low concentrations of drugs and pharmaceuticals, pesticides, etc. And all that, once the regulation is there, requires technologies to meet the regulation. And the current technologies in most places are limited. We still use activated carbon a lot as a solution. We use RO membranes just to reject that. Of course, it's not being eliminated. It's just being concentrated in brines. And then those contaminants go somewhere, to the ocean, to the river, underground, wherever. But what comes around goes around, of course. And so these are not really solutions. They are solutions, but we need better solutions, more sustainable, more economical, and larger scale. Because all these places, or most of these places that are already dealing with that, like Orange County in California or Newater in Singapore, they are just pilots if you take the global wastewater industry. Once that trend of reusing, or the need to reuse wastewater to potable quality will go global, we will need solutions that can deal with the huge quantities of water economically and efficiently. And I think that technologies like AOP, advanced oxidation, and it's a very wide term, it takes inside many sub-technologies, different methods, but at the end, breaking down, mineralizing completely the organic contaminants, even in very low concentrations, rather than absorbing them, like in carbon, or rejecting them, like in membranes, or sometimes in combination with those. I think will be booming. This will go very strongly in both potable water and reuse.
Which kind of AOP would you focus on? The ozone-based, UV-based,
they all have their advantages. There will not be a one size that fits all contaminants and all applications. So I wouldn't risk by choosing at the moment. I'm personally involved at the moment in developing or commercializing a UV-based catalytic approach, but I know that there are some very good successes with ozone, with ultrasound, and there are some even more innovative or other possibilities out there, both in research and in early commercialization. But in general, in a way, it's like activated sludge. There's no one way of using the bags. There are different variations, and each variation is sometimes better for a certain situation, depending on capacity, on the type of contaminants, on the footprint, on the economic situation, etc. Everywhere we use filters and we use chlorine. And I think that in a decade or so, AOP technologies will be the new chlorine, because chlorine was there, or disinfection was there, when the focus was only on microbiological contaminants. But now that there is a new focus or a new need to meet strict chemical pollution or contaminations in very, very low concentrations, we will just need to create the new chlorination or the new disinfection industry. And I think AOP might be the new disinfection industry.
Actually, you're offering me a very smooth transition to my next question, which would be, you said it starts with a need. So let's imagine there's a need out there, and let's imagine we have an idea to solve that need. What would be the steps that I would have to follow between my need and the moment where it's going to be so much common that everybody's using it?
First of all, take a deep breath, because it will take time in this industry. Seriously, one thing that inventors or innovators in this industry need is patience, because the adoption rate of technologies in the water industry is relatively slow. I mean, relatively, if you compare to digital or high-tech industries out there, consumer electronics or whatever, it's extremely slow. It may be similar to what happens in other infrastructure industries, but in general, it's not like you have a prototype, you go out there, you create a startup, and you boom in the market, right? what happens to Waze or Zoom or other things that got adopted, or WhatsApp. There's no water WhatsApp out there. It takes time, and with time, it also takes patient money, and the funding, the investing side of the business of water innovation is in a way a unique one. This is why there are some specialized investment funds for this. They know that the time scale is a little bit different. And also, there's a lot of government or public money involved in this kind of R&D and commercialization. I get to work a lot with the Israeli Innovation Authority, Horizon 2020 in Europe, other organizations and agencies around the world, PUB in Singapore, and others. They put public money into water innovations. So that would be the first thing to understand. And then there must be a need, and there must be a gap in the current solutions to that need. Maybe the best example is what happens with these PFAS, water contaminations now in the US. I mean, PFAS was there forever. If you look for it, the literature, people were talking about it, investigating it. It's not a new contaminant, but it's just a new need, because the regulation and the public awareness and change, and together with analytical capabilities, and within no time, it became from a very localized or a niche problem to a nationwide or even a global issue.
So regulation is a driver.
Regulation is a driver. People look at regulation as a headache, but in our industry, regulation is the strongest driver to any need, which, as we said before, is the prerequisite to any innovation, any practical innovation, right? I'm not talking about theoretical inventions, talking about innovation that can really, go out there and make a difference, commercially and in any other aspect. In many cases, it starts from regulation that creates a need, and then the market, the technology bridges the gap. There's a huge need all of a sudden, but technologies are not there. I mean, they are there with the old-fashioned carbon membrane, a little bit of ion exchange solutions, but these are more almost improvising solutions that were not originally developed or specialized in this kind of problem, which is new. And now there's a big rush towards getting new options to the market that are better than the current ones. Better might be more efficient, more cost-effective, more environmental sustainable. Whatever term you define efficiency. All those are gaps between what we have at the moment out there commercially and the need. Some things happen more quickly, like this PFAS crisis, or the example I gave before after the Flint disaster. Everybody started talking about lead. Lead was there forever, but when there's a crisis, all of a sudden there's a new need, and some needs develop more gradually, like the desalination cost that I mentioned before, like in general the reuse. The potable or generally high-quality reuse challenges that drive the AOP innovation in industry, or even the membrane industry in some sense. Another example for an emerging need or an emerging challenge and market that will, I'm sure, that will drive a lot of innovation, already drives some innovation, is the reuse of resources and nutrients, mainly nutrients out of wastewater, both municipal, agricultural, other wastewater. There's a lot of nutrients which we used to forever regard as pollution. Phosphorus, nitrogen, for the last 100 years, the industry developed ways of reducing those as much as possible so it will not be in the water. Mineralizing that, disposing that, whatever. We gradually realize that elsewhere we invest a lot in manufacturing fertilizers and other materials that use those nutrients beneficially, while we continue to dispose of them as pollution in wastewater. And now bridging this gap and closing that loop under what is now called circular economy.
Circular economy, yeah.
Yeah, this buzzword basically means that what some people used to say forever, that one person's junk is another one's treasure. The wastewater junk of nutrients is the agricultural treasure as fertilizers. However, we need efficient technologies to bridge this gap.
There's a gap. The technology comes in to fill the gap. Maybe it can be a recombination of existing stuff, but probably there's a need for improvement. But as you said, it's a conservative business. So I guess it's not from one day to the other that even with the best technology, you're going to reach approval and market fit. So what are the next steps?
The next step is proof of concept. So after you have a good idea and you show that it's feasible technically, you need to prove it in real life. And this is done mainly in a prototype or a pilot or both. And this is a very challenging step because many things work in the lab in controlled environment and sometimes in simulated concentrations or whatever. But when you start using, real water, real wastewater, complexities arise. Of course, both process complexities, engineering complexities, and financial complexities. And all that needs continuously to be addressed as we go forward. As I said before, if you just focus on one aspect and you neglect the others, you will find it will hit back at the end. It will be either not technically feasible if you just focused on the money, or it will not be economically feasible if you just focused on the engineering, or you have a brilliant technical solution, which is also economical, but you have no IP protection for it. So as you go forward, all these different aspects must continuously be monitored and acted upon differently in different stages. So the prototype or pilot is a very important step because this is where you really adjust the theory, but mainly the lab or the small scale, the controlled environment results into more real life. And then at the end, of course, when all that happened and was successful, then there's the products phase. So product phase, depending on the technology and the application, maybe mass production. On one hand, if you're talking about some technologies that are, more towards the consumer or the residential market. The other side of that is upscaling. If this should go to industrial, municipal, large-scale applications, there's a lot of engineering and again, commercial or financial aspects that needs to be addressed when you move from a prototype to full scale. And in the water industry, full scale can sometimes mean huge operations with huge engineering challenges. And so those steps must be covered because before you go through one, it's almost impossible to jump to the next. Both because you don't have enough information and understanding of your product or technology to go to the next step. And also because the market will not adopt something that did not prove itself on the previous stage. I mean, if this is a consumer product, then, you cannot just put it online for sale before you can really show and know that it works. And then there's the regulatory issues as well. You need all that to be approved sometimes. If, it's NSF or EPA or whatever that needs to sign off on the solution. And if it's an engineered or a full-scale project kind of solution, then you need the clients or the contractors, the EPC contractors, or anyone to take the risk with that. And taking the risk immediately on a full-scale plan is sometimes too risky for many people, and rightfully so. I mean, at the end, they need to both supply good water that meets the regulations, so they have regulatory liability, and they also need to make money, so it needs to be also commercially viable.
Actually, that's a very interesting point. Just if I recall the various steps, you said it starts with TAM, so you need to have patience and, of course, a good funding. Then there needs to be a gap, which is then a driver because there's a need. So there might be an opportunity. Once you frame the opportunity, you do a proof of concept, which can be a prototype, which can be a pilot. You have to take care of all the other aspects like IP, as you said. And then finally, you come to this step where there's this upscaling or the productization. What's the profile of people which go through all these steps? Because from your experience, I would be interesting to know, is it more the guy in the garage which has a genius idea, which might be the guru of process and which will be totally lost when it comes to productization? Or is it more the big groups that anyways know that the product might be that shape at the end and that might maybe miss the creativity at the beginning of the process?
I guess there are examples to both. There are great ideas in this industry that started from both universities and then grew up out of there. There are great ideas, I guess, that started in garages, if you like. Now, just a handful of people that started something very small scale and managed to go further with that. And there are amazing examples of major corporations that just innovated through a project or through a need, an internal need to win a tender or to solve a specific problem that then grew up to be a technology or maybe a spin-off company or whatever. So I think there's no one way of doing this. But at the end, in this kind of industry, maybe in any, but this is the one I know best, is it will require both the visionaries, so those crazy, if you like, people that think of a new thing, but at the end, the hardcore engineers that can actually turn that into a product, an engineered product. And at the end, we're dealing with water. Water is non-compressible. There are many people and we use a lot of water. So at the end, a great idea that cannot be upscaled or mass-produced, if that's the market, is a curiosity. It will be gone. And in the middle, there are the financial and the IP people that, keep reminding the engineers and the innovators that at the end, it should not only reach the moon, it should get there within budget and on time. And so, and protected if you really want to make it a commercial product. At the end, in our industry, it's inevitable to have the team of multidisciplinary people that take this idea from beginning to an end, to a successful end. And that's why I said at the beginning that bridging the gaps between them and translating from one to the other and kind of, smoothing the edges or dealing with the conflicts while understanding the approaches or the paradigms of each side of that equation is sometimes a crucial part of succeeding with it. Yes, so I think that combining those, it's always a team, but this is a team of people that come from very, very different cultures and
various perspectives, and
that's a challenge.
Ravid, I'm a bit sorry here because I have to be the bad guy and the timekeeper, and I could be speaking with you for hours. So I guess we should be planning a second version of that. So I'll take the opportunity here in the podcast to invite you to a sequel of this episode.
Sure, I'll be happy to share more. It's
I have a last question on that topic. You've mentioned one major pitfall, which is if you are just skipping one step in the innovation process, it's not going to work for whatever reason. If you skip the IP, the IP, for instance, well, you might be successful, but someone is going to steal your idea. Or if you miss the proof of concept, then nobody's going to be taking the risk to implement it on full scale. Would you see another pitfall that we didn't address yet, or something that innovators keep failing at?
Depending on the market, this is I think at the end, the very, very final step, this is adjusting the product to the different markets, and assuming that water is the same everywhere. And you have a brilliant idea that worked over here, then I can just go and copy and replicate it in other places. You might find some disappointments along the way. Water is very similar in principle in different places. But there are always local variations. There are no two identical rivers or oceans out there, and people are very different in different places still. So both the marketing, but also the actual engineering. Maybe it goes a little bit to a different topic that we may speak about in a future podcast, that this concept of if I have a great idea, then I can just replicate it and standardize it and do a one-size-fits-all thing. It's a very appealing concept because it's very economical to repeat things and do things in molds. But in this process type of industry, it will be very, very difficult to succeed this way. So even if there is a great idea and a great concept and even a great product, at the end, I think it will have to be maybe not tailored, but there will have to be some few variations or some flexibilities to adapt it to different situations.
Well, thank you, because that's brilliant. That's an excellent teaser. Now I'm really looking forward to that sequel. Ravid, what I propose right now is to move to the last section of this episode, which is the rapid fire questions. So I try to keep the questions short, and you can try to keep the answer short as well.
It's time for the rapid fire questions.
Sure.
It's tricky on my end, so I guess it must be on yours as well. My first question would be, what's the most exciting project you've been working on and why?
I think if I have to choose, that would be a project I worked on lately and still working on, which is a very interesting artificial intelligence-based monitoring of wastewater treatment processes. It's based on machine vision and some other trendy words, but at the end, this is kind of supposed to allow to replace an ongoing or a 24/7 operator that otherwise would have to watch and monitor the process by just a kind of mechanical eyes and brains. And this is very challenging and very innovative, I think.
What's your favorite part of your current job?
I would have to say variety of technologies and clients. At any single point in time, I think I juggle 3 to 5 different projects. No two are ever the same, and with clients from different countries, and this is just been fascinating.
Aside from the ones we already discussed, what is the trend to watch out in the water industry?
So I mentioned digital and AOP and nutrient recovery, and I have to add also solar or in general renewable energy desalination. This is one thing that is still, despite the reduction in energy use in desalination, it is still a major power consumer and greenhouse gases emitter at the end, and turning or matching the boom in renewable energy to the boom in desalination will change the world in a way.
what is the thing you care the most when you're designing a new product or a new process or a service? And also, what is the one you care the less, if there's one?
So the most, I will just have to use two of the biggest cliches in any industry. It has to be fit to purpose and cost effective. If it's not meeting both criteria here, it's not a good solution. Might be a great technology, but it's not a good solution. What I care the less, I would think that the skeptics. I mean, in fact, I think that if everyone agrees that a new innovation is spot on and perfect and will work, it is probably not innovative enough. So there will have to be some skeptics around that will say why it will not work, will have amazing reasons why it should not work. You always have to listen to them and prove they're wrong, unless they are right, because sometimes things do not work. So, but I think the skeptics are there, but you shouldn't overestimate or take it more seriously than you have to. Otherwise, you'll be just stuck with the why nots.
I really love that one. That's a cool one. To round it off, do you have some sources that you would recommend to keep up with the trends in water and wastewater?
Yeah, I really appreciate what GWI are doing. I think they are a great source of quantitative and interesting information about the industry. I like the AMTA meetings. If you're in membranes specifically, the annual AMTA conferences are very valuable, both as a meeting place, but a very, very focused small-scale conference about that. The other side of the range are WEFTEC, conferences and exhibitions. They are massive, but they really cover the wastewater industry well. And finally, I will just have to mention LinkedIn. I know many people look at that as a job searching platform, but I managed to meet or to get to know so many professionals that otherwise I would never have any access to, and to learn a lot from what people publish there. It's just a great communication and connection platform, even if you don't look for a job.
Talking about those professionals, you've been an amazing guest to this podcast, but would you have someone that you would recommend that might be a good guest that we have to extend an invitation in the minute?
Yeah, actually, there's a couple that I would recommend you would try to speak with. One who's I must say I kind of admire in a way is Boris Lieberman. He's the innovation person in IDE, and in a way responsible a lot for reinventing desalination a few times around. And he has a huge know-how and a lot to learn from. Another one that really looks at some different angles of the industry is Mike Dixon in Canada. Knows a lot about another trend, another hot topic that we haven't discussed, which is algae and cyanobacteria contaminations in water, and many other topics, and also really fun to work with.
I have a new top 2 of people that I have to invite. Thanks a lot. So Ravid, thank you for your time. Thank you for this very insightful discussion that we had. If people were to follow you online, where should I redirect them?
LinkedIn, probably my LinkedIn profile. My email is also there. I don't have a website at the moment, but I think the LinkedIn platform and emails are a wonderful place to get in touch and start a conversation.
Plus, you're very active, and it's always very insightful when I see what you're commenting left and right. It's every time I'm amazed, whoa, that's a nice compliment to the original poster. That's really an interesting view. So I would definitely recommend to follow you on LinkedIn.
Thank you.
So thanks a lot, Ravid. So I guess we will see us soon again, because we have a second episode now to record. So see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Don't Waste Water. This podcast was brought to you by GF Piping Systems. Loved this episode? Head over to Apple Podcasts to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. See you next time.